Destiel, one of the most popular shipping names at the moment, it is known to be the fictional pairing of Supernatural's Dean Winchester and Castiel. Hello there, I am Alexis, and I've recently found out about this while watching an Onision video, and honestly, the idea pretty much was convincing, and I found it quite likely to be realistic. I am a huge fan of Supernatural, and as of a week ago, I had no idea that this pairing existed. So, after finding out about this OTP, one could say, I started endearing in fan fiction. And, well, let me just tell you, I have recently read only two fan fictions, out of which one I found to be awesomely written and followed as part of the plot of Supernatural plot. So it was cool. And the other one basically ruined my life. Now, here I will present to you these two stories, which are the first being the story of You and Me. Now, it is a fan fiction I found online, which follows the adventures after the ending of season 8, when the angels fall. The first of the stories is called The Story of You and Me. Now, it follows the plot of Supernatural after the ending in season 8, when the angels fall. Dean awakes next to Castiel, not remembering what has happened the last 2 years. He is suffering from memory lapses, where he is forgetting every important thing that has happened to him. So he keeps a journal. Turns out he finally asks Castiel to stay, and so they are finally together in a relationship, although he really does not remember what has happened. The story unfolds with them kind of discovering this new life together, like falling in love with each other. And as time progresses, Dean suffers from another time lapse, and so the story involves on that mainly. But of course, Dean suspects that something is wrong during the story. He doesn't seem to be comfortable with what's going on because something is off. And it turns out at the close to the end of the story that it is a jinn, or a genie as you may call it. And it turns out that he has never really left hell. He is still stuck in there, and basically everything that happens in the jinn's fantasy world never existed. Although the story does have a silver lining because it ends with Castiel having witnessed the same thing as Dean because they both wanted the same thing. So basically, it's a really good story. I really enjoyed it, and I felt like it was awesome. There were some things that kind of take you off for a moment, like the fact that there's this new character introduced named Brenda, who results to be the new wife and of Sam, and turns out she is pregnant in part of the story, which is really interesting. So I recommend you read that one. Now, you honestly must be wondering why I am only dedicating a little bit of time to this first fanfiction, The Story of You and Me. And it's basically because I find it very interesting, but I found it to be, a little bit relative and off to the plot, and of course, in my opinion. But then again, the next fanfiction I read really has so much more deepness to it that it's really sad. It's called, many of you might know it, Twist and Shout. It's a very popular fanfiction. I barely started reading it last Thursday. It's a story that involves Dean and Castiel, only not in the supernatural storyline. So they're basically different characters. In this story, Castiel is not an angel, and Dean and Sam are not hunters. They are normal people living in the 60s. Whoever said "Don't cry over spilled milk" has honestly not read this fan fiction. I have. I think that Elvis Presley has never made me cry once, but after reading this story, of course, that has completely changed. So let's go ahead with this. This story, known as Twist and Shout, Castiel is a 19-year-old college student. He is studying medicine. And Dean, well, is basically a rebel. So the story unfolds with them sort of falling in love. Remember, it's the 1960s, so there's a lot of homophobia present during the time. And it's, of course, the struggle of homophobia, but more also the Vietnam War. And, well, it evolves so beautifully, because it's like the stages of love and how there are many adversities to it. One of the greatest phrases that comes to mind out of this book was the part where they go to Castiel's apartment, and Castiel asks Dean if he likes Elvis, to which Dean responds, "Elvis, yeah, I can dig Elvis." And well, the song played is "Can't Help Falling in Love with You," and it's basically the start of this whole love story. Castiel his friend Hester accuses him of being with Dean, and so he gets kicked out of his apartment. And then Dean and Castiel move in together. But not everything is so peachy over time because of the Vietnam War. Dean is called to go to the war, and so he must leave. Uh, he then, after he comes back, he has changed a lot, according to Castiel, because during the war he loses his friend, his little brother, as he states to call him, called Andrew, and of course, war always changes people. So, uh, borderline story. Dean eventually leaves Castiel because he feels like he's hurting him, to which Cass does not really engage in a very good way. Time passes, and Dean eventually finds out Castiel is sick, so he goes see him, and it turns out that Castiel is dying. It's a really heartbreaking story because at this point, a lot of things come back in from the past of the fan fiction to the present, which just turns out to make you sob in some way. I find myself tearing a bit up in a moment where Dean asks the nurse if she can bring him a projector so that he can play the video he took once when they were on a vacation to the ocean, to the beach. And so the moment where Cass asks Dean, "What's going on?" and Dean just responds, "We're taking you to the beach," I kind of find myself sad. And the story doesn't get any lighter; it gets sadder in any chance. Cass is starting to lose his senses, so he's starting to go blind. He can't speak, and Dean has to constantly talk to him. And then one of the parts that literally gets you is when Castiel is dying. This adventure starts out for them in April of 1965 and ends in April 1981. Um, it turns out to be something really endearing, and during the moment Castiel is dying, Dean keeps on whispering in his ear, saying, I love you, Crash, I love you." It's very, very heartwarming, and it strikes you really bad. Um, in a moment where Dean asks Castiel, "Why do you love that song so much?" and Castiel had once responded him, "I like songs of love." It's a beautiful moment, and at the same time really sad. Castiel eventually dies on Thursday. Fun note. and it's and from there on, it just keeps getting stressful. Not stressful, but it's in some ways you think you can't get sadder, but you get more depressed. Dean goes to Balthazar's apartment. Balthazar turns out to be a guy who wanted to make Castiel forget Dean, make him fall in love with him, but he knew he never could. And there is the record that holds the song "Can't Help But Falling in Love with You" from Elvis Presley, where Dean finds a letter Cass wrote during the time Dean had abandoned him. And in this letter, it states out, "Dear Cass, I was thinking about seashells today," which is basically one of the things that seriously hits you because you automatically find yourself caught inside the letter. And the moment it finishes, he doesn't say goodbye. Cass says, "See you then." It's it's so heartwarming, heartbreaking. And I honestly, much more than just finding it to be like part of the Supernatural franchise, you can limit it to a whole different story, because it's a whole different universe, and the story itself is just beautiful. And it ends with Dean taking care of his niece Abigail, and having started to write a letter saying he's going to keep his promises. The first two words of the letter are, "Dear Cass." Now, honestly, at this point, I think I was already a wreck. I wanted to kick things, beat the crap out of something, and I think I did. So it's much more than that. I think it's a really beautiful story, and it makes you think you're not gonna you're not. In some ways, you don't see things the same after it. I really don't know why. before reading this fan fiction, I remember a lot of people were telling me, I started crying after chapter 6. I'm a mess, everything. So I was literally afraid of, you know, reading it. It was like, what's going on? And but of course, I read it. The story just kept on getting more intense, more intense, more intense. And so I honestly, by the end of the book, I was wreck. Yes, no. And after that, I think I'm starting to dig this whole Destiel thing a bit more, honestly. But it's, how do I put this? Story is just, bottom line, I think people should read it. Not, like, take away the homophobia for a moment and think about everything that's stated in this story. It's war, it's homophobia, the fact that Cass is sick with something that's destroying his immune system, basically AIDS. So yeah, I mean, the story of You and Me, which is the first fan fiction I talked to you about, it's a really good story. You guys should also read that one too. I'll leave the links down below. But the story of You and Me just kind of caught me in some way. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to ever read it again without thinking about sobbing. In my life, the only books that have ever made me sob were The Lovely Bones and The Boy in the Striped Pajamas. And now I add this story to it. It's a really sad story. But it's very beautiful at the same time. I think it's like the achievement of love a lot of people would wish they could make. But I mean, this is just a quick summary of this whole Destiel thing and these fan fictions, which think I'm gonna start reading a bit more of. So tell me, what did you think? Guys, girls who have read this story, who know much more about this than I do. I mean, I'm telling you, I've only known this for like a few days. So what do you guys think? Is it a sad story? Are there sadder stories? Are you gonna ever be able to see the shells in the ocean again the same way? See spilled milk in one way? Well, thanks for watching. I suck at this.